Hello everyone, welcome back to another Python tutorial. I know I haven't uploaded in a long while, but that's going to change. I'm going to start uploading every once a month or so. So, today in this video, we're going to learn about data types and type conversion. So let's begin. Like always, let's make a new file. So file, new, then let's call this Python file, and then let's call this a data types type version. So, what are data types? Data types are methods of storing data. There are different types of data types. So, let's start off with the obvious one, which is a string. This, anything in quotes, is a string in Python. So, hello will be a string. One way you can find a data type of any given input, we can just write type around it in brackets, and this will output the exact data type of any input. So let's print the value and let's run it. It says it's a class str, which stands for string. So we know strings. What about these numbers? What do you think they will be? Those are integers. int. Those are just two examples. There are many more, like lists. This is a list. Right now it's a blank one, so let's add a few data types. Let's add a little data to it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's guess. What would the data type be? Would it be the data type inside the list, or would it be a list? Let's see. It's a list. Note, whatever is inside the list doesn't correspond to the data type of the list itself. This will always remain a list. But the inside data types could be slightly different. Let's see, for example. Let's change a 3 to a quote saying hello. Now we all know indexes in our last few videos. So the index of hello will be the index number 4. Index number 3. So let's type 3. So what would be the type of index number 3? That's right. It's an int. Let's find the data type of the hello inside of our list. What data type will that be? So let's first access it via its index. So its index will be 0, 1, 2. So if I type brackets 2 and run it, that's right. It's a string because hello is a string, and this returns a string. And so that's one other type. There is a similar to list type. It's called tuples. It's basically lists, but with instead of square brackets, they use curly brackets. So let's make a tuple. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's run it. See? Class tuple. This means that this is a tuple data type. And all the same rules apply to tuples as they do to lists, other than one major rule. You cannot change a tuple after it's been made. And we'll go over that in the next video. So let's access the third element of our list, which will be a 3. Let's put this in quotes and type hi. So if we run this, we'll get a string, because the hi is a string and it's in part of a tuple. There's another data type. It's called floating point, float. So if I type 2.3, this is a decimal. We know that. So if we run it, it'll say float. because this number is a float data type. So that's the 5 major data types in Python. Let's go over type conversion. What is type conversion? Type conversion is especially useful when you have inputs from the user, but we'll also go over that in a further future video. So let's say I want the string 3 to be an integer, but right now it's a string. How would I do that? Well, we know the class and then in quotes str and all those outputs, right? Well, Python has made it really easy, and it tells us exactly what to type around to make it an integer. So all we need to do is type int like this, and this will now return an integer 3. Int. So that's how you convert between string and integer. Anything can be converted between a string and integer. So a string can be converted into an integer, and an integer can be converted into a string with no problems. Only the string can only be converted into an integer if there are no characters. If there's only numbers or no decimal points, it's perfectly fine. So now let's look what happens if there are characters while we're trying to convert a string into an integer. So here we have a string. Let's type 3a. Now this a isn't a number. What would it give us? That's right, an error, a value error. We covered value errors in error handling. So this means we basically cannot convert 3a into an integer because it's not an integer, because a is not a number. So if it's 32, perfectly fine, we can convert it to an integer. And now let's try converting a string into an integer. Now let's try converting an integer into a string. So this is an integer, 3. We know it's an integer. Now if I want this to be a string, I would just type str around it and run. See, now it's a string because I put str around it. Now let's try converting a floating point. So we all know what floats are, right? Floats are numbers with decimals, like I showed before. So 3.2 to a string will be a string, because 3.2, which is a float, can be perfectly converted into a string. Now, let's go to the lists and tuples. So here I have a list. 1, 2, 3. This is a list. I want to convert this list into a tuple. How would I do that? Well, it's easy. I just type tuple, brackets, and now its type would automatically be a tuple. If I want a tuple to become into a list, which I can just change the square brackets into, I can see that this is a tuple, and this is list to make it a list. So now this tuple would be a list. So let's run it, and there we go. It's a list. So that's basically data types and data conversion in Python. And this is very basic. There are loads of other data types which we can get into if we go to data science, like arrays, like data frames, series, but those are a little too advanced for now. If you want me to make a video about this, make sure you comment down below and I can help you out with those too. Thank you for watching. And, as always, goodbye.